In this session, we will discuss how processor allocation can be accomplished. So we will discuss 5 different algorithms in this session. The first one is a graph theoretic deterministic algorithm, followed by centralized hierarchical algorithm, then a sender initiated distributed heuristic algorithm, receiver initiated distributed heuristic algorithm, and finally the bidding algorithm. So we'll start with the first one, that is the graph theoretic deterministic algorithm. Now if there are a number of CPUs and this number of CPUs are smaller than the number of processes, then several processes will have to be executed heavily loaded on those processors or CPUs. Now the idea behind this algorithm is to perform an assignment in such a way so that we can minimize the network traffic. Using this algorithm, we are trying to perform load balancing across various CPUs. Let's understand this algorithm. Now here, each vertex represents a process. In total, we have 9 processes: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H and I. An arc between two vertexes indicates how much two processes are communicating between each other. So we use a numerical value on each edge, which indicates the unit of network traffic that takes place between two processes. Now the blue dotted line indicates the communication across different CPUs in a distributed system. So we'll see how load balancing is done using this algorithm. We'll try to understand this algorithm in 2 different scenarios, scenario 1 and scenario 2. In this scenario, we'll try to find out what is the communication load between CPU 1 and CPU 2, and then CPU 2 and CPU 3. Now how do we calculate the communication across CPU 1 and CPU 2? Wherever this blue dotted line is intersecting, we will calculate the load. So we have to calculate the load between A to B, E to B, E to H, G to H. So the values are 3, 2, 4 and 4. So the total load across CPU 1 and CPU 2 is 13. Now we will calculate the load between CPU 2 and CPU 3. So we consider the arcs where the blue lines are intersecting. So the arcs are B to C, F to C, F to I and H to I. So the load is 2, 8, 5 and 2. So the total value comes to 17. So now in this scenario, when we calculate the load across CPU 1 and CPU 2, we got the value as 13, and the load between CPU 2 and CPU 3 was 17. So the total load in this particular arrangement is 30 units. Now the question is there any other arrangement which can help us to reduce this load? We will try and see. Okay. In scenario 2, what we are doing is we are moving this line somewhere else. Okay. So earlier the location of the line was over here, which was indicating the communication between CPU 2 and CPU 3. Now that line has been moved over here. The same way we calculated the load in scenario 1, we have to calculate the load over here also. So the communication across CPU 1 and CPU 2 will not change because it is the same as scenario 1. So the load continues to be 13. Now we will calculate the load between CPU 2 and CPU 3. So we'll have to consider the arcs C to D, C to I, F to I, and H to I. So the load is 3 plus 5 plus 5 plus 2, which gives us the value as 17. So now the total load in scenario 2 is 13 plus 5, 28. So in scenario 1 we got the load as 30, and in scenario 2 we are getting the load as 28. So now what is the conclusion? So when we compare scenario 1 with scenario 2 is much better because we have only 28 units of network traffic as compared to scenario 1, which has 30 units of network traffic. So this is the working of the algorithm, that is graph theoretic deterministic algorithm. We move on to our next algorithm, that is centralized algorithm, also called as the up-down algorithm. Now this algorithm is a heuristic algorithm. Now the job of this algorithm is it tries to maximize the CPU utilization by giving each workstation a fair share of the computing power. So in this algorithm we have a coordinator, and this coordinator maintains something called as a usage table. Now in this usage table there is one entry per personal workstation or per user. Now this entry is initially set to 0. When a significant event happens, messages will be sent to this coordinator to update the usage table. And the allocations decisions are based upon this usage table. Now these decisions are made when the scheduling events happen. Now what are those events? Now the events could be a processor is being requested for, or a processor has become free, or the clock has ticked. We'll try to understand this algorithm much better now. Now we have workstation and the coordinator machine. Now when a process M is created on this machine and it wants to execute this particular process on some other workstation, so what the system will do is it will contact the coordinator and ask whether it can be executed on any of these workstations. So now the coordinator will see in the usage table if it is possible. So here we can see that all the workstations are busy other than workstation 1. So in that case, this process M will execute on workstation 1. But if even this was busy, let's say even workstation 1 was busy, then in that case, this information would be stored in the usage table as a remark that there was a workstation which requested the use of a workstation and it could not be satisfied. So that could be maintained in the usage table as a remark. Now when a workstation owner is running processes on other people's machines, it accumulates something called as the penalty points. Now we have one more thing, something called as the penalty points. Now these points are added to the usage table. So when it has unsatisfied request pending, the penalty points will be subtracted in the usage table. When no requests are pending and no processes are being used, the usage table is moved a certain number of points closer to 0. In this way, this particular score keeps on moving up and down, that is positive and negative, and hence the name up-down algorithm. So we'll try to understand about this penalty points. Now in this penalty point there will be 3 values. Either the value will be positive or negative or it will be 0. So a positive score indicates that the workstation is a net use of system resources. So when it is positive, it indicates that the process has been granted the requested resources. When it is negative, the score means that there is a process which has requested for certain resources and the resources are still not assigned to that process. And a 0 score indicates that it is in the neutral state. Let's understand this example. Let's consider some workstation. So let this be a workstation 1. And a process M has moved to this workstation to execute certain resources. So initially the state over here will be neutral. So this green line indicates it is the neutral state. So now here process 1 has arrived. So now the value will be negative as the resources are still not assigned to this particular process. And it continues to be in the negative state until and unless the resources that are required by this process are assigned to it. So at this point, we assume that the process 1 is allocated to the processor. That means the resources are granted to this particular process. So now it starts moving in the positive direction. As it moves in the positive direction, there's one more process, process 2, which has arrived. But process 1 is still in the execution phase. So process 1 still continues its execution mode, and at this particular point process 2 is allocated the required resources. So what we can say is process 2 is allocated to the processor. Further, process 1 is still in its execution phase and it keeps on executing until and unless it finishes with the execution. When process 1 has finished with the execution, process 2 will start with the execution until and unless all the required tasks are completed. So at this particular point we can see that process 2 has finished its execution. So process 1 also is done at this point and process 2 is done at this point. So if you observe carefully, when we look at the penalty points, here it was negative, 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 and once the resources were assigned, it started moving in the positive direction. So it kept on moving until all the tasks were completed. So once both the tasks are executed, it will move back towards the original location. So it will move towards the neutral value, back to neutral. So just because of this negative and positive value, because it goes down and up and down, that's why the name up-down algorithm. The next algorithm is the hierarchical algorithm. Now in this approach, the systems are organized, or the machines are organized just like people in a corporate system or the military system or the academic system or some other real world hierarchies. Now over here we can see that some of the machines are worker machines and other machines are working as their managers. Now for each group of workers, one manager machine, that is the department head, is assigned the task of keeping track of which machine is busy or which is idle. Now if the system was very large, there would be more number of departments. So here we are showing only 4 departments, but if the system was too large, then we would have more number of departments. And in that case, the number of deans in the committee of deans also would be more. Now what will happen when a department head stops functioning or it crashes? Let's assume that there's a crash in the department head, or this particular machine is not working, or one of the dean from the committee of dean is not working. So now in this case what will happen is a worker machine might be promoted at this particular position, or same way from the department of head will be promoted to the dean position. That is the reason we do not have a single node in this particular structure. It is not like this, that we have a single node and then subordinate nodes. But at the root level, we have more number of nodes. That is, here in this case, it is shown as a committee of dean. So in case if there is failure in one of the dean or one of the machine, then the other machines or the other committee members can take a decision of who will take care of the departments. So the same particular structure is followed with respect to the machines in a distributed system. Now moving on towards the sender initiated distributed heuristic algorithm. Now when a process K is created on one of the workstation, the machine on which this particular process originated will send something called as a probe message to the other workstation in a random fashion. Now what are the contents of this probe message? Now this probe message is asking the workstation if the load on this workstation is less than the threshold. So if the load is less, then this particular process will be sent to the workstation 3. If not, then the probe message will be sent to the next machine, and so on. Now this probe messages can be sent only a fixed number of times. So after sending to a fixed number of workstation, if all the probe messages fail, then the message will come back to the originating machine and the process will be executed on the original machine. So this is about the sender initiated distributed heuristic algorithm. Now moving towards the receiver initiated distributed heuristic algorithm. Now whenever a process finishes, now let's assume that the processes on the system are done with its execution. Now this system checks to see if it has enough work. If no, it will ask the other machines randomly if they have any other work to offer, so that it can execute that particular task on its machine. Now if this machine has nothing to offer, it will ask the next machine. If no work is found with n number of probes, then the receiver temporarily stops asking for job and comes back to its machine, and if there is any more work in the queue, it will execute those particular tasks in the queue. So this thing happens in round number 1. After executing the job in the queue, it will again start with the same process in round number 2, and this process will continue. Now what are the advantages of receiver initiated distributed heuristic algorithm? Now this algorithm will not put an extra load on the systems that are critical at times. So when the system is heavily loaded, the chance of a machine having sufficient work is small, but when this happens, it will be easy to work and to take over the load. When there is little work to do, the receiver initiated algorithm creates considerable probe traffic, as all the unemployed machines desperately hunt for work. Moving to the last algorithm, that is the bidding algorithm. Now here we have n number of processes. Each processor advertises its approximate price by putting a publicly readable file. So this is the readable file of process 1, readable file of process 2, process 3, process 4, and so on. Now this price is not guaranteed, but gives an indication of what the services are worth for. Actually, this particular price which it has quoted is the price that the last customer paid. Okay. Now, different processors may have different prices depending upon their speed, the money, the hardware they have, and also the response time. Now, when a process wants to start a child process, now there are two machines and they want to start a child process on one of the workstations over here. So what this particular systems will do, it will go around checking to check out which system is currently offering the service that it needs. So system 1 also will check over here and system 2 also will check. So finally it then determines the set of processors who can service or whose services it can afford. So now you can see that this particular machine has found that system or processor 2 is the best suited to execute its task, and this machine also has identified that processor 2 is the best suited to execute its task. Now both the machines will generate something called as a bid message and send the bid message to the first choice they have made. Now this bid value can be higher or it can be lower than the price that is quoted by the processor. Now this particular processor will collect this bid also and will collect this bid also. And then it will make a choice by picking the highest bid value. So either one of the processors will win and the other will be a loser. And then the winning process will be executed on this processor. The published price of the server is then updated to reflect the new rate. So if the price quoted by this machine was, let's assume it as 5 and this was 6, and here the price was, let's say 5.5, then this value will be updated. So this machine is the winner, this will be the loser. And finally the new price of processor 2 will be 6.